It's interesting because, like, my experience in hiring is whenever I talk to developers that I want to bring onto my team, like one of the main things I always ask is, can you just tell me about something you've worked on and that you've were
Mm,
passionate? Like, it could be anything. It could be a side project. Maybe you automated something in your home with a Python script, or something you work for in another company. Obviously, I'm looking for them to demonstrate how they could provide value to me. But
mm,
if they can just speak passionately about something, then I trust that if there's any technology that they don't know that my company uses and I need them to learn, I feel like I'm confident that they'll be able to pick it up, because you can just you can just tell, and I can just tell because I've worked in the opposite scenario where I worked for a local city of Miami, and that was sort of like a bureaucratic job where even the developers were just like, um, I can't even think of a nice way to put it. They're just lifers, Another term for it is like expert beginners, where it's like
mm.
that you could work in a position for 20 years and never really learn or become an expert. You're just doing the same thing you did the first day on the job, and that's how it is with the developers at the. That's really mean. I don't want to like. There's a lot of great developers in the city of Miami, but the general air and culture is you could pretty much sit at your desk with your heads down and never innovate and never really have to learn any new technology. And a lot of people would take advantage of that. So, when I interview people in a traditional sense, where I'm asking them to join my team and have a salaried position, I'm looking for them to explain what it is you can do, and just I'm looking for passion in their voice. I'm looking for them to say, "Oh, I ran into this problem, but I researched it and I finally figured it out."
Mm.
And I think that is the same thing as what you do when now. What I'm doing, I'm posting on my channel. I'm demonstrating that I'm so interested in programming and game
I'm
development that
spending my free time building entire content. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And I think too, the other thing is like, I 100% agree. I've also met, I used to call them work to rule developers. They would work to the letter of the law and do exactly what they need to and then leave, which is fine. Like I used to really dislike those kinds of people where it felt
Mm,
like they really treated programming as just like any assembly line job.
right.
And I used to kind of almost feel it like an affront. Like these are people in my career or field and they're sort of treating it like it's some random sort of pointless thing, and they don't respect patterns or learning how to
Like
get
an
better and
assembly
stuff.
line, just sort of like
Yeah,
knocking things out.
but I had my own little epiphany where I was like, you know what, to them that's what it is, and
Hmm.
that's kind of fine. Like for example, when you brush your teeth in the morning, that's like a passive thing you do, but there are people who are dental hygienists who like they live and breathe every bit of documentation about it, all of that stuff, and to see you sort of passively disregarding what to them is a big deal is kind of the same thing. And once you realize that there's not a single thing in your life that there isn't somebody who treats it like it's really really important, from everything like random stamps to how you align your cables to the audio equipment you use. So like I felt like there's no value in being priggish anymore about sort of that there being some power to this. But I will say I don't want to work with people who don't care about it. So I guess the difference is I think the universe is perfectly fine having people who feel that way,
Right.
but I find you will do better if people believe you like what you're doing.
Yeah.
You will like as like people will want to work with you more. You'll be forwarded onto more teams. You'll have more offers and stuff. So this is less about saying it's a bad thing and more about saying that's fine if you're like in your 50s working as a DBA and you've been doing it for 30 years using the same Haskell library, and you're like as well like just sort of you're basically clocking in, making sure the company still exists, the data doesn't go anywhere. That's if you want to just clock in, clock out, all power to you.
Mhm.
But if you're somebody who is hiring people, you don't want to hire somebody like that unless you are literally hiring them to maintain something in a passive state all of the time.
Yeah.
And realistically, that's not the case in most cases. So it's usually when I hire somebody who is genuinely engaged and passionate. And one small note on that too, like Charles said, is that so it's like a portfolio. It's like the sort of you're broadcasting what you're interested in. And I find this is more valuable these days because I can't speak for everybody else, but I've noticed I just don't have time to maintain the previous programmer metric of hobby and interest. People used to say, "What is your GitHub? Let's see your
Uh-huh.
projects." They'd bring up the chart and go, "Does he have green dots? Is he actually committing regularly to personal projects? Is he a passionate developer?" I mean, that sounds great, but I'll be honest, I don't have time for that. Like, I can't let people measure me as a like how passionate or interested or how engaged I am by some arbitrary set of commits to
Uh-huh.
some library. I need to demonstrate it in a way that's commensurate with my life, and that would be being involved in communities, because to me that's as you said, it's like double dipping. I get to create content, I get to demonstrate that value, but it's also valuable to me and my, God help me, brand, like I and that's more valuable than me just arbitrarily making a small project and just regularly committing it to it just so that I have green dots that look great on interviews and stuff. So it's just, I think the way things are going, this is just a better approach for your whatever. And this is actually another thing. It's great advice. If you are hiring somebody, some kind of contractor or somebody to do some work, um, it can feel like you're doing the smart thing by getting this really clinical brief and giving
Mm.
them, I want a thing, I want it red, I want it circular, I want this. And you feel like you're like, I've got it right. But the thing is, if you get that back exactly as you asked for, and it's not what you want, we're back at this position where it's like you'll begrudgingly feel like you have to accept it because they did exactly what you asked for, and you don't like it, and you're
Yeah.
going to be really bummed out, and you're not going to want to work with them again. And the thing is, you've now done them a disservice by trying to do the right thing. And so I find it's a far better solution to give them something to try to work with you on. So
Mm.
even if they're not bridging the gap for you, do it for them.
Yeah.
So whenever I'm working with somebody, I will say, right, let me tell you about the project. Here's what we're doing. Here's what our goal is. Here's why we think it's a good idea. Like, we think it's valuable for this, this, and this. And sometimes it's worth asking their advice and say, what do you think? Like, you're the person who's in VR, and this, we don't do VR, but we kind of think people would really get a kick out of this in our project, in this and whatever. And they'll normally work with you at that point. And once you can effectively get them as a contractor to buy in to your project, they're going to do all of the stuff we said as kind of like bend over backwards more to help you, because they feel like they're invested in the project succeeding now, as opposed to clinically hitting the notes that you gave.
Right.
So if you're hiring somebody, make a point of like telling them, this is what the goal is. This is why we're doing it. This is the project I want to make. And it's a great way of gauging whether you're going to work well with them. Because if they come back with, that's a great idea, in fact, here's some links to stuff like it, like I said earlier. If you fall into that category, you know you're going to have a good working relationship.
Thank you to all of my patrons, and a special shout out to Jennifer Irwin, Christian, Urizer, Alwyn Kuravilla, Umit Sarin, Anton, Mighty Possum, Amar Duranovic, Dustin, Nav from Academy of Games, Usuf Ali Castle, Iron Alex, Trond, Dark Rush Photography, Glasswell Entertainment, and R-Star. Thank you.